Katherine McKinney.
Very much. Thank you. Sweet. Good morning, everyone. We are so glad that you are here today. And I'm joining many Centers for Spiritual Living as we talk about, for the month of August, about beauty, about nature, and about art and how that reveals itself. Reverend Cathie and I are talking about receiving generously. Now, I think that topic and that talk and that phrase is really an interesting idea, and perhaps it's a little bit surprising, because I think we don't often think of receiving generously. Generously more often goes with giving and what you're talked about to do. But something came up in a workshop a few weeks ago that brought this to my attention. There's a story that this woman told about something that happened to her at a time when she was really busy, she was really stressed, and she didn't have time to get a lot of things done. It was also tax time. Well, her tax accountant phoned her and said, "Okay, I'm done. I need you all to come and take care of some stuff." Well, the hero in our story had no time for that. She lives in a remote, mountainous place. She didn't have time to get down the mountain to do all that. She said, "I just don't have time to do that. I will just file late and pay the fine." Well, the accountant didn't like that for whatever reason, and she said, "No, let me bring the paperwork to you." "No, no, no," our hero said. She wouldn't have any of that. "It's a long way up there. It's a couple of hours. I cannot let you do that." And the accountant said, "I really insist. I really want to do it." So they went back and forth like this for a bit. Finally, the hero relents and allows the accountant to come up, and they take care of everything in a timely fashion. Now, the woman that told this story in a workshop we were doing, and it's because she became aware at some point in there of her reluctance to receive. Here someone was offering something very generous, and she was fighting that, and that was surprising to her. So she started doing some thinking about that. But you think about, in Centers for Spiritual Living, we have a number of things that we believe. And one of the things we say is, I believe in the givingness of life to all. So if I believe that, then I want to be willing to receive that. And we also understand that prosperity is a balance of giving and receiving. And so often we think about, well, if somebody gives me something, I'm going to take it. We don't actually pay attention to the times that we may not be receiving. But in this case, this person recognized her own reluctance and that tightness that she had around there and what she wanted to think about doing it. So what I'm wondering about is in nature. That's got me to thinking about a receiving. In nature, where we are, we have so much beauty. We have beaches, we have sunsets, we have mountains, we have forests, we have flowers everywhere. And how often do we take time to actually receive these gifts? I don't mean just notice them. I mean receive. How often do we pause before this beauty that is freely given to all of us to just take time to say thank you within? I'm so grateful for this gift. And I wonder about that. Now, I realize that in Southern California, what we often say is that because we have such mild weather and such abundant sunshine, that we become jaded about weather, for example. Well, it's the same old fabulous weather. It's yesterday, today, tomorrow. And that we just don't accept that sort of thing. But actually, I don't think it's Southern California or any other places. My family has lived from coast to coast. And I can tell you, I've noticed that attitude from coast to coast. We lived in a small beach community on the East Coast. I mean, we were a short 5-minute flip-flop walk from the beach. And we could hear the surf at night when we were in bed. It was very easy to go and appreciate that. And yet, around our neighborhood, people will often say, "Okay, when was the last time you went down to the beach to take a walk? And then people go, ooh, it's been a year. So I also know that we lived in a place up in the woods. We lived in the mountains, very beautiful, natural beauty. And in the wintertime, when the leaves were off the trees, the sunsets that we had would just grab your eyeballs. They were so stunning. And how often do we take time for any of those things? And we're not talking a long amount of time. We're talking about quality time so that you actually receive. So this consciousness of prosperity is something that I'm interested in, because the idea that we can feel this gift that we've been given adds something to our understanding of receiving. That's what I am beginning to understand. And I think that the woman who was telling the story was also beginning to understand it as well. Now, I know that Monica mentioned the idea that sometimes when someone offers you a compliment, we very often want to reject the compliment. Look good, are you kidding me? I got up late this morning. I had to just throw it together. I mean, it's just, I don't know. We reject them. Or sometimes we're a little more sophisticated than that, because we've had the suggestion, you should receive compliments with a thank you and not argue with them. So we get more sophisticated. So we tailgate. As soon as someone tells us something nice about your lovely outfit, oh, yours is fabulous. Let me tell you, you are so wonderful. Rather than just taking that moment to simply receive and say, thank you. I appreciate your saying that. But that is a custom that we have. And one of the things that I think it betrays is that we have in our set of beliefs about many things about prosperity, both giving and receiving. And it seems to me that one of them is that things that are freely given are really not worth very much. So in devaluing them, we just reject them or don't take the time to accept them. And yet, these gifts are there for us to receive. So I guess one of the things I'm wondering is if we are not willing to receive all that is given to us, at least regularly and some of the time, then how willing and how open are we to receiving even more that we're unaware with? How are we putting a lid on our prosperity? Remember, I believe in eternal givingness of life to all. So we already have all that we need. That is what the science of mind teaches. We have all the love we can ever want. We have all the goodness that we can ever want. We have all the abundance that we ever want, everything. And yet, we are also told that the limits that we have are those we put on ourselves. So I'm suggesting that perhaps one of the ways we limit ourselves is in our reluctance to receive, for whatever reason. I'm not interested in the reason why. What I am interested in is the persistence of this belief. As a part of the workshop that we were in, one of the things we were supposed to do was to stand up and move about the room, and there were two things. We were to pay compliments to 3 different people, and we were going to be receiving those compliments, and when we did, we were to just accept the compliment graciously. We couldn't tailgate with another compliment. We were simply to receive and then move on. Well, I was a good little soldier. I did 4 or 5 compliments to people, and when I received them, I said thank you, and I was very good. And then, less than a week later, someone gave me a very generous compliment, and what did I do? I immediately began to tailgate on that compliment. I am going to tell you that I caught myself, but I almost missed that opportunity to receive generously. And so I am very struck with the idea again that this belief that I must have, this belief that I must have is persistent, because I consciously have been thinking about this idea. And yet I went on to betray that belief, to allow that belief to guide what I said. The woman in the story, the hero of the story, I have to tell you, is an incredibly generous person. You know that a tithe is a 10%. For her, it begins at 20. She's a double tither. She's very generous. But in addition to the cash that she gives away, she also gives of herself in many, many ways. She is also incredibly prosperous, very prosperous. So the idea that she was not willing to receive really got her attention, because she likes receiving. She would have said that immediately. I receive lots of things. But crossing the threshold the way she did in that one particular instance where she let it go and she consciously realized that I want to change, made a difference in her life. The very next day, she received a personal check with a lot of zeros at the end of it. So she began to wonder, I am prosperous, and yet I have put a lid on my prosperity, and as soon as I released something, I received even more. So ladies and gentlemen, I believe that this is something we can all do. We can receive, and we can receive generously, and we can take time to allow that feeling of generosity to move through us. And I am suggesting further that our own prosperity may depend on it. So what I'm asking now is, are we willing to say that I can receive generously? And so I'm looking to hear a yes with that. Yes! And so it is. Thank you. Thank you very much. And now for the other half of our billing today, I am delighted to introduce to you my colleague and my friend, the Reverend Cathie Sinfield.
I've tried to treat myself into being taller, but I always have to use the little step. Thanks, Reverend K. Now you've got Reverend C. And I don't want to forget to tell Sonny, thank you for writing that song. Amazing. So when Reverend Katherine and I were discussing the topic, we fairly hastily chose receiving generously. And then during the week I had a terrible attack of topic remorse. Because what on earth were we thinking? But I started reading and looking into it, and looked at why Centers for Spiritual Living is presenting this as an idea. And they describe this topic as, we believe in the eternal givingness of life to all. It's been said that you can trust a universe that produces flowers. Reverend Katherine mentioned the flowers. Truly, life gives of its bounty, beauty, and goodness in many forms. And we have the ability to respond with open-hearted acceptance and gratitude. The giver of life delights in gracious receptivity, and our abundance expands with our appreciation. So I'm thinking about all this stuff, and I thought, we learn to give, but learning to receive is an art form that we often ignore. And it's our ability to receive a gift that is given to us what really counts, like Reverend Katherine said. Sometimes we feel weird being given to. Sometimes that comes from a sense of unworthiness and not deservingness, and we talk about that a lot here because it's a huge block. But there's that little element of when someone says, well, I'm going to pay for this meal. We go, oh, no. We reach for our wallets. And now I'm not suggesting, there's a fine, very refined expression in Australia called don't be a bludger. And it means you've got short hands and long pockets. And I'm not encouraging you to be a bludger, but I am encouraging you to be a better receiver. And I was thinking about why we don't receive well, and we all do it. Like it's already been mentioned this morning. And one of the things is that as kids, or children, as Dr. Maury would say, we're given treats and we're given love and we're given all this sort of stuff. And then we find there's a price attached to it. Because, you had that ice cream, you had that fun time, you had that great time today, and now look at the way you're behaving. And maybe unconsciously we go, you know what? There's always a consequence to receiving. I don't appreciate receiving stuff because I'm going to get something later, something bad. So it's like getting bad credit. You don't know when it's coming. And I'm wondering if that isn't something that needs to be healed in our spiritual psyches. We've got to learn that it's safe to receive, because the universe doesn't count the gifts it gives us. It doesn't have 5 fingers. Okay, you've had your turn, you're going to get what you gave. That's old stuff. When we come to this center, we learn we can have it all. And there's so much that's not depleting anyone else's share of all. It's just opening our minds to receive, as Katherine Ponder writes. So when I say no to receiving, I'm taking away someone's joy in giving to me. And I think that's part of receiving generously, is allowing myself to give that joy and that privilege to somebody else. And it's a habit we need to get used to, really. Excuse me. And I read Giving Feels Fantastic, because if there's a giver, there has to be a receiver. And allowing yourself to receive is an act of love. If we don't allow others to give to us, we're blocking that circulation that you talked about earlier. And it won't be just that love, it'll be blocking our abundance, blocking everything good that comes to us. So in an act of receptivity, an act of freedom with open arms, that I just love the words of Sonny's song, that we're then open to receive every good thing there is that God has to give us. So, I'm giving a lot here. And I was talking with someone during the week who is having a bit of a challenge and finding it hard to accept help. And for someone that speaks English beautifully, she went, "It ain't easy." Good Lord, she must really mean it if that came out of her mouth. And she's right. We've learned that it's not good to take. It's selfish. And I think this might be a generational thing. It's wrong to accept giving. So we can get over this. One of the biggest things that I learned this week in thinking about this is when we give, we're assuming a position of power. When we put ourselves in a position of receiving, we're more vulnerable. I had to think about that for a while, because it's a really different way of looking at this for me, but I think there's an element of truth in it. So when we are receiving, we're actually giving, because we're giving that person the joy of giving back to us. And we're opening up that circulation thing. We're opening up all those laws of giving and receiving that we know work well for us. And so it would be a good thing for us to think about how we're blocking our good. Then we just get to say thank you and receive it. Monica touched on the thing about circulation and exhaling and inhaling, and I thought she was going to follow that through. But when we exhale, we're it's the same as giving out. And when we inhale, we're receiving. There's a balance to this. There's a universal law of nature that says we have to do both. Because if we keep breathing in, we're in trouble. If we keep breathing out, we're in trouble. Nature has a way of stopping this by making us unconscious, but, there is a law that sticks to this. So just remember, there's balance, giving and receiving, and learning how to do that. I have been enjoying Raymond Charles Barker all over again, so I'm going to read you something he wrote, because knowing that this is a subconscious thing, when we look at it, he's a very down-to-earth chap, and he says, how to change the subconscious pattern is, unfortunately there are a great many people with attractive surfaces, but with the same old rubbish underneath. If you fail to direct your subconscious mind to change, it produces on the law of averages. And you'll be nice and you'll be a sweet person, but you'll be totally ineffective. He tells it like it is. I call this mind surgery, he writes. It is the way in which you go into your subconscious, you destroy old patterns and instill new ones. You smash and destroy those records of your old beliefs and open yourself up to wonderful new stuff. He goes on, learn how to receive abundant provision, divine revelation, overflowing miracles, amazing encounters, and more. And say to yourself, I now demand that every limited pattern be erased from my subconscious mind. This insidious subconscious thinking is now gone and shall never return. My whole consciousness is free to prosper today, in all the days to come. This it does with consistency and joy. All things are working together for my happiness and freedom to do what I want to do at the time I want to do it. In my consciousness, God is the principle of ease, giving me freedom to be all that I choose to be. I'm always supported and upheld with spiritual ideas as I live life effectively and happily. I give freely. I receive the good I'm meant to share freely with others. I praise the wealth of God now circulating in all my affairs. And Catherine Ponder summarizes this in one of her books. I hope you know Catherine Ponder. The word receive means to accept. Psychologists tell us we have to accept anything first by mentally accepting it. We hear a lot about giving, but not enough about receiving. And many of us have a hang-up about receiving. Giving is only half the law. Receiving is the other half. We don't want to create an imbalance in our lives by not being able to receive as generously as we feel we can give, because it's your Father's good pleasure to give you the kingdom, and it should be your good pleasure to receive it. So what you notice and you talk about, you're inviting into your life. You know, I realized I'm thinking about settlers here when I go, you know, if you sit around going, I have enough money to last the rest of my life until I have to buy something. So just, Ernest Holmes writes a little short piece in his Creative Ideas where he says, we lift up our cup of acceptance to the divine bounty when we think affirmatively and when we give thanks to the giver of life. Daily, we should practice that our cup is filled and running over, always remembering that what we affirm for ourselves, we must also affirm for others. Living and let live, giving and receiving, loving and being loved. Our experience is filled with God's abundance. By doing all this, we're helping make the world a place that works for everybody. So let's learn to be generous receivers. And so it is.